Well, thank you, everybody, for applying for the committee and for coming tonight. We had a very, very talented pool of people applying. Thank you all. This is a very talented group and a very diverse group. And we have also with us Pam Rodwell, who will be hopefully the liaison from the 2229 Oversight Committee. So I'm gonna let you guys do your thing, and starting with electing officers. I don't know if you want to do that first, or everybody introduce themselves, or how you want to do it exactly.
Should we go around and introduce ourselves?
People on Zoom hear us without the microphones. I don't think the microphones are.
I think it is.
We're using this.
Can we hear them?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. I can see you. I'm very sorry about I'm in Vermont. Very unexpectedly.
Yes.
I have a new grandchild as of 6 p.m.
Congratulations.
So I think the suggestion is we were gonna go around and introduce ourselves. Do you
Yeah.
wanna?
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
I suggest that we start that and then do the officer.
Start with
thing. Pam, you want to start? Get the,
Me?
yeah,
Oh,
the
okay.
Zoom people.
All right. Well, I'm happy to start. First of all, again, my apologies. I'm an environmental lawyer. I worked my entire career, major career was at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, from which I retired a few years ago. I teach environmental law at Boston University Law School now. I have a clinic on environmental law, and I teach climate sometimes and environmental justice sometimes. My children all went through the public schools here. We have 3 children. I have been on several town committees and boards, FinCom, the Town Study Charter Committee, I was the chair of the Energy Future Task Force. I was on the Climate Action Advisory Board, and I was recently on the Light Board, from which I resigned because I didn't want to do 2 boards, and I thought that my skill mix maybe was better suited to this particular board. I'm finishing up my 2nd book right now, and otherwise, I don't know what else to tell you. Any questions of me at this point? I will say that relevant in part of my career was a lot of Superfund work as a supervisor of other lawyers, and working on national policy and being involved in several negotiations on Superfund sites.
That will come in handy here.
Pam, may I ask, this is David, I haven't introduced myself yet, but did you go all the way back to Woburn and Wells G&H and all of that? How far back on Superfund do you go?
I went way back. I was there at the very beginning. Jan Schlickman was in our office trying to get us to get involved at the very beginning of that situation. And I remember, talking about Superfund when there were no cases or any regulatory material at all. So I was there at the very outset. And I ended up doing work that was largely, it became managerial fairly quickly, hiring lawyers, setting policy. I actually testified once in Congress on municipal liability. But I guess before I stop, I want to make it very clear that I am not a Superfund lawyer right now. And you should not look to me for current knowledge on Superfund. It's extraordinarily complex. What I can tell you is it's a very, very complex statute, and the liability ideas are very, very complicated. So don't rely on me. We need a lawyer for this whose current specialty is on Superfund. So and I did check out my any ethical conflicts with EPA, and I don't have any.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Carl.
Hi, I'm Carl Seidman. I'm a economic development practitioner. I'm been a Concord resident for a little less than 5 years now. I had worked on was on the consulting team with Civic Moxie that worked on the comprehensive plan for Concord that was done a number of years ago. And I also was on the last 229 Main Street reuse committee. I have a fair amount of experience in real estate development, real estate finance. I worked for the predecessor agency for of mass development, which was called the Mass Government Land Bank, which was originally set up to reuse military bases that got closed in 1975. And I was involved in some of the early reuse planning for Fort Devens, which was a super fun site. I also, taught MIT's Department of Urban Studies and Planning for 25 years. I taught economic development finance and economic development planning, commercial district revitalization. So I think what expertise I bring to the committee is more on the real estate, finance, economic development aspects of the project.
Thank you.
Going this way? Okay. Rich Feeling. Career-wise, I sort of had 3 phases. I worked for the New York City government, and then the government of Massachusetts, was Assistant Commissioner of Public Health at the end of that time, and then worked for Arthur D. Little for 10 years. And I spent the last 25 years of my career at Boston University School of Public Health, teaching, working on health systems development and finance internationally. I married into Concord about almost 30 years ago to a former neighbor of David, Susan Ellsworth. I also have a sort of personal interest here. My particular interest initially in graduate school and before that college was sort of how science and government affect each other, how government makes science policy. And so I figured this is kind of a practical application of that. I'm also chair of the Concord Housing Foundation and a member of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. The foundation is an NGO, it's not a governmental organization.
When were you at Arthur D. Little?
Pardon?
When were you at Arthur D. Little?
1977 to 87.
Just this year, I started 89 to 2000.
Well, were you there? Were you there
I was there
when
when
it imploded?
I was there when it died, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't cause it.
No.
Just a coincidence.
The Harvard Business School hubris is what killed it, I think. Anyhow.
When were you at the Department of Public Health?
74 or 5 to 70 something. When Bill Bicknell was, well, first Bicknell and then Dr. Fielding.
Hey, could you, excuse me for a minute, could you do me a favor? I don't know many of you. If once in a while you could say who you are when you speak, not regularly, but I don't know, for example, the person who just spoke, I'm just not familiar with you, most of you.
Good point.
So just, identify yourselves if you could, once in a while.
Okay.
That was Rich Feeling.
Okay.
Hi, I'm David Ropeek, and this is my first time serving the town in this capacity, any kind of capacity. Relevant, lived in Concord for 40 some years, including, did you live in Davis Court?
No, I met Susan
Yeah,
after.
but she moved out, we lived in the same house. My relevant experience, I suppose, for this is that I spent the first part of my career, 22 years, as an environment reporter for Channel 5 in Boston. That's why I was asking these background questions. Up until the year 2000, so from the late 70s through the year 2000, when Superfund and hazardous waste sites were a blossoming issue, got a lot of attention, traveled all over the country covering them. I then switched to the Harvard School of Public Health, where for 2 years I was basically the fancy PR guy to a group of scientists who studied risk quantitatively, big policy, comparing cost benefit analyses, that kind of thing. But I had already done some stories for having read The Psychology of Risk Perception, which is the study of why people tend to fear things more or less than the evidence says we need to. That's all over the place. That's all of us in this room. We just instinctively do that. And because I knew that, they added me to the curriculum of a professional education course there called the Risk Communication Challenge. If you know why people feel the way they feel about a risk, you can treat them with more respect and communicate with them more effectively. And I became co-director and principal faculty member of that course for 6 or 7 years. I consulted in this sort of stuff, risk communication around the world, for governments and Emerson Hospital and the EPA and Ministry of the Environment in Ontario and a bunch of places. Have retired from that. I've written 2 books and have a 3rd one coming out. The first 2 are on risk. First one has a chapter on hazardous waste sites. It's basically here are the basic facts so that you can decide for yourself more knowledgeably what the deal is. So that's when I'm David Roping. I'm still David Roping, Pam.
Oh, thank you. That's so helpful. I'd love to know that. Nice to meet you, David.
So Pam, I know you, but Gary Kleiman.
Well, Gary, I was going to say that I do know you, and I'm so happy to see you here. I really am. Yeah.
I know most of the people in the room, but just to introduce for those who I haven't met extensively, I am an atmospheric chemist by training, but so environmental scientist, but I know very little about soil or water contamination. My field is air pollution, air quality and climate planning. My real sort of contribution, I think, to this group is that I've been active on a number of town committees here in Concord. I was on the West Concord Advisory Committee and served a couple of terms there, and then moved to the Planning Board. And while I was on the Planning Board, I was also the co-chair of the Long Range Plan Committee, so helped to develop the long range plan that Carl was a consultant on with Civic Moxie, and they did a tremendous job, and Carl, you did a tremendous job looking at economic vitality, and so I think it's great to have those skills. And then after I was done with the Planning Board, I served on the predecessor to this committee, I guess, alongside the 2229 Oversight Committee. We had the NMI StarMet Reuse Planning Committee. I was a co-chair with Paul. We wrote that report, and again, Carl wrote a very valuable annex looking at about, 30 or 40 Superfund sites and how they've been redeveloped. So I think there's a lot of good material in that report. And now I'm on the Natural Resources Commission, and I think there's, as we dig into it and you look at this site, there's a lot of natural resources that merit protection at this site. And so I think I am serving double duty as a little bit of historical knowledge of the prior committee, but also a liaison to the NRC committee. So, Gary.
All right, my name is Kurt Herman. I've been in Concord for about 16 years now, and my background is in geology, economics, and environmental engineering. So I'm licensed as a professional geologist, and I've been working in the environmental consulting field for about 25 years now. And one of my practice areas is site characterization and remediation strategy, and particularly brownfield sites. So I've worked on a range of brownfield sites across the country, including ones that are redeveloped for industrial uses as well as more intensive residential use. So I've had experience with some of the issues, but not from the perspective of the town. So it's kind of an interesting twist for me, although I have worked for towns as my clients, so I have seen it from their perspective, but kind of second. And I recently joined the Board of Health in Concord. It's my first involvement on a town committee, so I started in December of last year.
Great. Thank you. I'm Paul Bohm. I've lived in Concord since 1976. Have 3 kids. My 2 daughters live in Thoreau Hills. One is actually a butter to the Superfund site. I live in Thoreau Hills as well, so we have a kind of a personal scientific stake in the whole matter. I started my work in town on town committees on Pam Rockwell's Main Street Oversight Committee on the technical side. Morphed to the reuse committee with both Pam and Carl and Gary wrote that report. I'm currently on the Recreation Commission as well. I'm the representative on the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee. So we're one of the many possible uses of the site is the recreation, and that body is doing a strategic plan. So it kind of jives pretty well with what's going on here. My professional work, I'm an oceanographer, a PhD in oceanography, but I'm kind of an amphibian. I've kind of crawled on land over time, and besides doing oil spill work, a lot of Superfund work, more on the the CSI whodunit kind of thing, forensic investigations. Kind of, I'm a time traveler. I try to figure out what happened 100 years ago or 50 years ago at these sites, and who did what when back in time, and who's responsible for it. It's kind of an interesting. So I tell my kids and grandkids I'm a time traveler, which is kind of blows their mind. What else? I think this committee is just a terrific assembly of talent here, and I'm just excited to be chosen on the committee. Thank you, Terry, for putting together a great group, and looking forward to working with everybody.
Okay, I'm Carrie Flood. I don't know exactly what the cameras are.
You're not in, you're the only one who's not in sight. That's terrible. I can't see you. No, okay, no, just, that's, I'd love to be able to see you. I don't know you.
Actually, the last 2 years are the only 2 years I haven't actually been on a town committee since 1989. Started with the Finance Committee, went to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Assessors. I was on 3 different building committees, 2 school and 1 Harvey Wheeler. I have been liaison for various committees to the operating departments like Plant and Public Works. Separately from town service, I was on the board and treasurer, finance person for the Concord Housing Trust before the town was able to get around the lowest qualified bidder laws and took over the actual construction of affordable housing in Concord. The work career is a little more diverse, and I'll start with saying that I dropped out of college to work in the anti-war movement full-time. Worked with some really interesting people, including Noam Chomsky, Dr. Spock, not the one in the space movies. Some other people whose names are less notarized and noticeable. But and if you consider that and then understand, or if you can believe, I went to work at NMI when I needed a job on 3rd shift when my daughter was born. I thought I would stay for 6 months, and I stayed for over 20 years because they offered me 100% flexible hours, good money. While there, I became the production control manager. It was a 3-shift operation, so it was very handy. Lived a mile away exactly up Main Street. It was a good deal for a recently single mom when that offer came through. I was on the employee relations committee. I was on the safety committee. I actually responded to a couple of fires in ship barrels and things like that. But if you Google my name hard enough, long enough, you will find that I did provide an affidavit to what I guess I'll summarize as the presumption of cause for cancer there when that was done. I actually laid myself off. It happens to be the same year that it was designated as a Superfund site, but that's really unrelated. It had to do with change in management that I just could not stomach. My daughter, who had been the baby all those years before, let me know that she had gotten a job with health insurance and it was time to quit. Since that time, I was 10 years managing director at Emerson Umbrella. And now I'm coming up on 10 years as operations manager for the Metro West region of Mass Audubon. So I'm closer to where I started out in terms of ideals, but I did try to make the best of the time for the benefit of the workers, if not the company, while I was at NMI that became StarMet. So great.
So the last person that's not here is Kurt Booth. He'll introduce himself when he comes
Right.
to the next meeting, but he's kind of well known.
Very
Town.
Yep.
And you would want to just hear briefly from these people also.
So I'm Pam Rockwell. I'm the former chair of the 2229 Main Street Oversight Committee, and I've been involved since its inception. And I was on the reuse committee and helped write the reuse. I have a degree in biology, but really was a computer geek after, but I did work my way through college, working in labs with a variety of different hazardous chemicals. And so for a while shortly after that, and I got a good sense of what the safety procedures were like and what it's like, and got a real sense of which things have risk and which things don't from that. But mostly I'm someone who thinks that I'm smart enough that everybody should be able to explain stuff to me, and that arrogance is meant. That when papers come across my desk with all these acronyms, I make people explain them to me, and that helps other people understand them and get a sense of it. So that's what I really bring to this organization.
Great, I'm happy to be sitting next to you. I'm not a scientist, I'm Megan Samudo, I'm the new deputy town manager here for the town of Concord. And I just started at the beginning of April, so I'm very new, but this is a project that I will be working with you all on. So I'm thrilled to be here and learn from the vast knowledge in this room and on Zoom today. So thanks for having me. No.
Yeah, I was going to ask who's
I know.
recording minutes, and I don't think we ever actually declared the meeting.
Where, Megan, I'm curious, and did that community or whatever have any environmental issues like this, anything that overlaps?
I'm Maynard, as the assistant town administrator. I didn't work on any environmental issues like this. No, this would be my first super
They
fun.
didn't have anything popping up with the mill development or anything?
There was all sorts of contamination, but the level of enforcement and ability to uncover it, it's just a much smaller town.
Well, it wasn't super fun level.
Yeah, no.
Megan, would you be the contact person if we had questions about postings, agendas, and all this stuff?
It's a good question. I think for now, sure. I'm not sure. I'm still trying to understand the roles of staff, the levels of staff support across different committees and task forces.
We're all trying to understand. I think
So-
it's evolving. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm agreeing to, but I'm happy to help out. And I think whoever is working with this group, I think me and maybe a few of my colleagues would probably work really closely with the chair to empower them to do some things. But we can help on the technical side. So in the meantime, sure. Yes.
So Shannon has told me that Megan and or Chris Carmody
Yeah.
provide
Yeah.
staff support.
Yeah.
We'll figure out how that works. We move on.
Excellent. Okay. So I think probably we should elect officers, and my role as I think I will continue as a select board liaison. I will find out Monday. I think I am going to be, but we'll see. We don't even have a chair yet, a new chair at the select board, so everything's in flux with us. But I've requested to be the liaison. It's really a privilege to work with all of you. The vast amount of talent here is incredible. My role is to observe and just help with logistics, open meeting law, whatever. And if you have a vacancy, help recruit. But I will sit and observe and let you guys do your work.
But in lieu of a chair, you're taking nominations of the officers.
Okay, right. So let's,
Can I nominate Paul?
Can I ask a question? I did read the I guess the 2020 task force report, not word for word, but a lot of it. And how many of you are deeply embedded in that? How many of you were on that task force?
Four of us.
So
You're talking
4
about
out of
the reuse task force?
Yeah, well, the one that produced the long report that
Yeah.
somebody graciously gave me to read. I
Yes,
maybe
four
Paul, you-
of us.
Four of
Well, four including
And three on
Pam,
the liaison.
Well, 3 plus the liaison.
Right.
and that would be Paul, Gary,
Carl.
and Carl as
Right,
consultants.
yeah.
Paul
No,
and
no, Carl was a member of the committee. He was a consultant on the long range plan.
That's right, that's right.
so there are
He was a
4
resident.
people, 4 people on this committee who were on that committee.
3 people.
I'm not actually on the committee, I'm a liaison to the committee.
All right, just curious, because I mean, at some point, I'm going to want to understand what that was a pretty in-depth report, and it made recommendations which were like the ones we're supposed to be making in part, I think. But I just want to, at some point, understand the dynamic between us
We're going
and
to
the
discuss
pre-existing.
that report, the context of that report, and here when we sort of get into the business of the meeting, because that's an important point now.
Okay, thank you.
And I think right now, electing leadership, right? So
I think we should elect.
I nominate Paul Bohm for chair.
That combination.
Okay,
We have
we
seconds.
have a
Discussion.
nomination and second for Paul. Are there any other nominations? Hey, all in favor? Hey, Chair.
Yes.
I'm going to, they will call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I think it was unanimous.
I will step up to the awesome responsibility. This, just, a few
And you want to elect a clerk,
we need a vice chair
all
and
right?
somebody has to take minutes here as well. It, could be volunteer.
Was this sort of, just out of curiosity, I'm thrilled that, Paul, you want to do this. Was this sort of predetermined in a way? Or did this just spontaneously erupt just now?
What do you think?
I don't
I
know.
mean-
I'm curious. I am very interested in the dynamics of this group because
Well,
I think
so-
there's a
so-
lot of history here, so.
Pam,
Sorry.
Paul and I were co-chairs of the prior committee. So we've been deeply enmeshed in this topic for 4 or 5 years now. And as the former co-chair, I nominated him as chair for this spontaneously, but I can't say that it wasn't in the back of my mind.
Okay, no,
prior
that's
to
great.
showing
No,
up.
that's wonderful. I think that's wonderful. That's a great way to do it. Thank you. Just want to know.
And admittedly, I've been the squeaky wheel here in getting, well, the 3-headed monster has been myself and Gary and Pam. We've been squeaking with the select board for a couple of years now to move beyond that report, the great report that you're.
Because as you very astutely observed, Pam, that report was issued in 2021 and not a lot has happened since then. Yet it seemed to provide a lot of recommendations that would give us a basis for action. So yeah, we've been squeaking, trying to take the next step. And we're hoping this committee will help us do that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I'm not trying to be difficult or snarky. I just want to understand the dynamics here.
No, and I think we'll dive into the context. It's just, we needed a chair first.
Yep, got
I
it.
do think we've opened the meeting sort of casually earlier on, but I'll call the meeting to order. We need to elect a vice chair and probably a clerk. Any nominations?
I nominate Gary.
I respectfully decline. With my role, not to again be snarky or whatever, but with my role on the NRC, I am actually, sort of doing 2 committees at once. And I don't know, maybe vice chair isn't such heavy lift, but I'd rather share.
Well, just as an aside, this is going to be this is a working committee. There's a lot to do, as you'll see as you go through the charge. Terry put together the charge like that's a lot of work to do. And so I think everybody's going to have a role and we're probably going to have to figure out how to organize. So whether you're a vice chair or clerk, I think by joining this committee, you've almost assuredly said, I'm going to be busy at times on this. So anyway, I just didn't mean to.
Yeah.
So is there anybody who would volunteer for either of those positions?
Vice chair or
Clerk or
clerk.
vice chair?
I assume the clerk has to write the minutes.
understand that there are many committees in town that don't, they have a rotating clerk, everyone takes turns.
I mean,
So you can do it that way.
I'm probably the least knowledgeable person on this committee. I have read the 2021 report. So I figure I got a bone up. I have to take notes anyway, so I would volunteer to generally take minutes, although there will be meetings I miss, I'm sure.
I think every meeting will have to make sure somebody's taking minutes if you're absent. So if you volunteer to take minutes tonight, you're the clerk of du jour. So,
And the meetings are recorded, is that correct?
the meetings are recorded.
So you can
When you
follow
go
up,
back and
you can go back and play the recording.
Vice Chair,
Does anybody, I mean, I would be willing to do it, but with the understanding that I need some guidance from the chair on when and how help is requested.
So I'll have to point out that one of the challenges of this committee compared to the other ones we were on, is that you're supposed to also work with the town lawyer. And I'm not actually sure, like which things have to be in executive session. How do you do that?
yeah.
And Carrie might be the right person to do that, to know
Yeah.
those things.
There's a lot of,
I can reread it all, but yes, I have a general familiarity with that.
I will accept your self-nomination, and I
And
promise to work with you. And yeah, we have to, if I can make a meeting.
you have to have the vote first. I mean, somebody has to make the nomination and second and then say.
But your caveat seems to be that I need to work with you. I will accept.
I did not, I
I nominate Carrie as vice chair.
And
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll accept. I didn't mention in my, who I am, what I do. I'm also on the board of Middlesex Savings Bank and treasurer of its charitable foundation board, so I do have other, not exactly volunteer, but other stuff outside of my job to do. So,
Okay.
but vice chair, I'm happy to take. Thank you.
And do you want to both make Frank the clerk? Or Frank, you're only clerk tonight?
I mean, I'm willing to do it.
So I nominate Rich as clerk.
I mean, yeah.
I
Let's
second.
go by Richard.
Why don't we use Richard?
Okay.
Frank is necessary when dealing with banks and passport officials.
Rich is better when you're dealing with banks.
I second.
Okay, I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So one of the challenges of this committee is that there are 9 of us, is that when we get together again, there's gonna be a lot of opinions that people wanting to talk, so let's try not to talk over each other. I'm guilty of that as anybody else when I'm on a committee. And, if you want to be recognized, just, either raise your hand if you're on Zoom or give me a nod and I'll make sure everybody's heard, so we can kind of keep it moving. I'd like these meetings to be no more than an hour and a half. So I'm looking at the clock here, you'll finish in about an hour. When I looked at the agenda, there are a lot of pieces to this agenda, but the simple task here is to figure out what is our charge? What is the select board asked us to do? And how might we go about doing that? So there are a couple of things that are related here. If you just look at the agenda, I'll just, if you have the agenda in front of you, I can put that up. Let me see if I can share my screen. If this works.
Yeah.
Screen. And got it. There you go. There we go. Okay. Wow, it worked. So we're through number 3. Just very briefly on the open meeting law. I think you all have the booklet here. It's an interesting read. We came close to violating open meeting law, but we were not a task force yet. It's very simple. The heart of what we want to do here is not to have deliberations. And deliberations are defined by a discussion of relevant task force business with a quorum of people. It's a quorum. The quorum in this task force is 5 people. So theoretically, you could talk with 2 other people, email 2 other people. I'm just going to say, please don't email a group. I don't mind if you email me, or when we have a staff position, email the staff, and he or she can distribute that. But let's just play it safe. Even though we have a large quorum, and, you know, we could talk to each other, let's not do that. As far as the going into executive sessions, Pam raised that, is in the open meeting law. There are 10 criteria for when we might have to do that. Let's visit that when that comes up. I don't see a need to do that unless we're discussing legal matters that require that. I'm not sure we have that yet. So I don't know if anybody else has anything more to say on open meeting law. Terry?
Okay, that was an excellent summary. I just wanted to add that you are allowed to do it with email if you want to schedule. Okay, but that's the only thing you can do. So if you have to talk about, oh, I can't do Wednesday, I can do Tuesday and all that kind of stuff, that can be done in Rubino. But if you get an email from somebody like Megan or me or the chair, do not, unless it's about scheduling, never use reply all. A lot of people know this, right? But if you haven't been on the kind of thing, that's where the public can write to the Attorney General and get us in all this trouble stuff. Do not use reply all. That's a deliberation, unless it's about scheduling. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And don't give a reason for scheduling if it relates to the subject matter. I didn't raise my hand.
When it comes up, it's also very, you've got to be careful about editing documents. You can't, if somebody sends a document, you can't edit it in Word with track changes and then email it to the group. That's considered a deliberation.
That's right.
So.
We have a rather hefty report in our future, but we're not quite there yet.
Can I just ask one question on that? If there's a document, one of us agrees to edit it and then sends it back to the chair for distribution with the agenda
Right.
to be discussed, that's legit, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think in the past, we said that if there's one person that's in charge of the document, they can mail it out. Everyone can give responses, but you don't reply all, you only reply to the person who's in charge of integrating the change.
Integrating the comments.
Before each meeting, there'll be current meeting documents on the website. And I think Shannon McAndrew did it for this meeting. I think she's going to do it for other meetings as well. If you have a document that you want us all to read before the meeting, you can send it to Shannon, she'll post it. There may be some things that come up that you feel we ought to look at before meetings. That's another vehicle for kind of communicating something important before a meeting. We do have a website, it's in development. But right now it's a placeholder. Before I get to the charge, there are a couple of things that we're going to have to think about and schedule.
I was, Paul, I
I'm
raised
sorry.
my hand.
Yeah, I have to learn how to be a chair. Sorry, go ahead, Pam.
I just want to see if if you can see that I raised my hand.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah, I see
Okay,
it.
can I just ask an open meeting question here? I just want to be clear. I mean, we can, I agree we should not be replying all and we should be doing things as a group without talking to each other a lot. But I gather that one-on-one conversations are perfectly okay. I mean, if I wanted to talk to Gary for a minute about something, I can do that, right?
Absolutely, yep.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to clarify that sort of thing can happen because it may happen with me as I get my sea legs on this. Not necessarily talking to you, Gary, but I just want to make sure we are understanding that we can do that.
Yeah, we have some latitude. The quorum is 5 people here, so and the open meeting law defines a deliberation as a discussion amongst a quorum. So, you know, 1 person, 2 people, that's fine. Conversations. I'm just saying, let's be on the safe side and not use email a lot because that could.
Okay,
That-
I thought you were also discouraging us from doing the one-on-one, which I could understand, but I want to get clarification that I can if I want.
Okay.
Yep.
And I will look for hands. I will learn how to be a chair. It's my first Chair.
No,
will.
that's
With your
fine.
hands.
It's fine.
You have to put your hand down after.
I don't know how to lower my hand, frankly. Lower hand, okay.
There you go. Just want to mention briefly that I think it'd be very beneficial if you haven't been to the site to have maybe we'll have one of our meetings on the site. I don't know. I have to talk to Bruce Thompson about that, but I think it'd be very, very beneficial for us as a group to walk the site. By the way, that'll be a quorum. So as you walk amongst the site, you can't do business. You can say, oh, that's a nice tree. But that'll be defined as a meeting, but we'll discuss.
Post it that way, and walk the red, the top, post.
If we post it as a meeting, okay, you're right.
If you have a quorum, you should post it.
Yeah, okay.
But you can also attend a meeting that staff are updating you, for instance. So for instance, going to the community meetings there, you don't have to post those.
Just as a show of hands, I know some of you have been to the site. Is some preference to visit the site? Yes?
Oh, yeah, I've not been.
Okay, have you been to the site?
I have been, but it's worth seeing again at some
But
point.
the site always changes. They're digging and moving dirt all the time, and it's very dynamic.
And excuse me,
Yes,
I believe, I've been there only once, but have followed it kind of since forever. And the perspective that we now sit in changes how you look at being there. Where's A1, and where's A4, and all of that is different than a general, oh, that's what it looks like. So additional visit, I think, is well in order.
Yeah, I'd really like to do that sooner rather than later. I have walked the perimeter that's shared with Minuteman Arc. And looked at it from there and tried to peer up from the road, but I would really like the opportunity
yeah, it's a big, it's a big
with the
site.
diagram in hand. So
My feeling about the site is that for a long time it was a problem. And now it's an opportunity.
Mhm.
Not without its problems, but it's kind of flipped over. And I think more and more, even in the past 2 years, more town departments and individuals see needs being met, in various places. However, there are safety issues, there are risk issues. And our main task, though, is to advise the select board. And if I'll just flip to the next agenda, which is review of the task force charge. And I have it on the screen here. I'll go right to the purpose here. Purpose is to recommend to the select board whether the town should acquire the property. I think a corollary to that, you can't make that kind of recommendation without saying how to acquire the property. What would we do with the property if we had it? How do we communicate with the public? So there's a lot of, if you go down in the charge to the duties and responsibilities, you see a lot of the kind of the subtasks that I call them. And we should think about the subtasks as we go forward. I'm just going to read these, and please stop me if you want to discuss any of these in detail. But I want to come back to these because I think we have to organize around some of these major tasks. I view A, B, C, D through I as, some of those are real tasks. We're going to need people to focus on those areas. First one, we have to estimate and discuss the legal method of acquisition and the acquisition cost. How when we talk to the select board and through our report, how are we going to acquire the site? And what are what are the liabilities? What's the legal mechanism for doing that? Obviously, we're going to have to liaise with town council on that. Mina Markarias or somebody else from Anderson probably will be working with this committee. I will say, just to jump ahead a little bit, that EPA has offered a consultant, the same consultant that worked with the reuse committee, a consultant called SKEO, SKEO. SKEO is EPA's contract on site redevelopment issues. So they were sort of our staff, EPA paid for them to be our staff on the reuse committee. EPA has offered them again to this committee to be part of our staff. And I think they've met with some people in town or had a conversation about how they might help. And there's another document which I'll add to, we won't go over that here. It's a table which EPA has said they can help with these different areas, ranging from advice on reuse, advice on mechanisms for acquiring a site. They can't give us legal advice, but they can help be an interface. So I think that's going to be a very important interface on the legal part of this as well. Interface with the contractors performing cleanup. This is DeMaximus and their group. They've been doing really an excellent job. I've been doing Superfund work for a long time. They are very transparent. They are very communicative. They're very technically proficient. They are problem solvers. You know, when you go to clean up a site, you're going to find things that even through the remedial investigation project, they've been discovered. They've been discovering new things. They've been tackling them. They've been going back to EPA and to the responsible parties for additional funds. So they're very proactive, and that's given. I can't speak for the select board, but I know the select board has had them as a speaker. They've given me and others in town committees reassurance that they're going to meet the obligations. The obligations here are to clean up this property to residential standards and to meet the requirements that are in the legal document, well, the consent decree. So there's always questions, well, you know, what can we trust the contractor? All indications are that I think they're doing a good job and they're very transparent and they have meetings very often. I'm sure you'll attend some of those, and I think so that's the interface. Likely uses and potential development plan. Pam, you mentioned earlier about the reuse report. I think I view that as sort of a 20,000 foot, maybe 50,000 foot foundation for what we have to do here. You know, we sort of laid out the possibilities and various options, mix and match, and we kind of said, well, we divided the site into different areas based on potential reuse, and we had a lot of good information there, and I think that document provides a lot of foundation for our work here. It's a very good reference document, but it doesn't give us all the answers. It gave us options. For example, on how to acquire the site, we had a chapter that said you can do it this way, that way, that way. You know, we gave options, and so, but we have to be more specific as we go forward. I think one of the charges here is to come up with a, it's on the next page, come up with a conceptual plan on the reuse. In other words, take that down another step so we can tell the select board, yes, well, if we recommend acquiring a site, here are some of the possibilities, and here's what you can do in various areas. That leads me to another important resource here. The town has received a TAG grant, a technical assistance grant from the Mass DEP to hire a consultant. I think in your package you have that the statement of work from the TAG grant. I think the town is about to go to contract with a consultant. I'm not sure exactly where they are yet. Is that can?
Yes, we are working on reviewing the contract.
Yeah, great. So that consultant, their job is to simply put, to do a reuse specific risk assessment. In other words, assuming that the site is cleaned up, and they have to, this contractor has to ensure themselves that that's the case. What can we do at various areas in the site, and what are the risks, if any, of doing, putting a building here, or putting a playing field there, or putting a house here in different areas? A very practical, deeper dive into the risk and safety world. And you know, I like to, I'll defer to the risk professionals here. I like to think of using the word safety rather than risk. We have to convince people that it's safe. Now, safety and risk go hand in hand. I understand that, but there's always a risk. The job of this consultant will be to do this reuse specific risk assessment. They will operate independently, but they will liaise with us, and we haven't talked about how we're going to do that yet because they haven't been hired yet. But at some point, we will want to meet with them. And our risk safety subgroup, we'll have them as a resource as we move forward. Gary?
Clarifying question. I mean, I understand with the tag grant, we're supposed to look at a variety of potential uses and risks associated with those potential uses. And looking back at the prior report, it sort of had a master plan, but then 3 specific variants that were illustrative. Is your reading of this charge, and I ask because we have Terry here tonight, is your reading of this develop and recommend specific alternative reuse plans with costs and timetables, that the job of our group is to narrow down to one single plan, not necessarily one single use, because there may be multiple uses in different areas of the site, but are we trying to narrow down to one plan or a set of 2 or 3 alternatives? It's a question, I don't know.
I think that's open for discussion. I think I'll equivocate by saying somewhere in between. I think the options are out there, and that's in the reuse plan. I think at this point, with the help of this consultant, we need to be a little bit more specific. Give me an example. We've talked a long time about areas that were never contaminated at the site. And those are the only areas we probably could put housing on, for example, I think. And there are other areas that, in the center area that were, contaminated and are being cleaned up where the buildings were. Maybe that's the place where buildings go. And maybe there are other areas that playing fields go. I think we can, and we need, this is one of the subgroups I think that we need to form here, a group that actually thinks through how we take the various options and come up with a more specific conceptual plan. But Terry, I'll ask you this from the select board's point of view, because you actually have that in the charge in the second page, I think.
Yep. Number 5 was develop and recommend specific alternative.
Yeah, specific alternatives. How specific? What are you thinking right now? You don't have to answer that question right now, but it's a good question.
I think it's a great question, and it's up for discussion. But a couple of things are, I think you also need to consider the option of not acquiring the site and put that in the report. So, write down about that option. If you're not recommending that option, why not? What are the pros and cons? So I think because there's a lot of people in the public asking the question, why don't we just rezone it? So don't just throw out that alternative, include that in your report. And the other thing is, I think you just mentioned about subcommittees, which I was thinking about anyway.
Subgroups, I call it. We're not even going to commit a.
Just be careful about building. Yeah, they're very strict about subcommittees now. So if you have, let's say, a legal subcommittee, where you have, say, two or 3 members meeting with council and we're reporting back to this group, that subcommittee would have to follow the open meeting law too, because it may be going executive session with the council or whatever it is.
What you're looking for clarification, if you're saying if we define a sub task force that becomes the open meeting law.
Yeah.
So that's-
Yes.
Okay. then we won't-
Yes, they amended
We won't do
the
that.
open meeting law, and it's really strict about subcommittees now.
We'll call it a liaison then. We do have,
If you have one person that's liaison, then that's
yeah,
okay too.
2 hands are up. Carl.
3, David had his.
I should have hand up. Let me go to Carl first. Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just reading through under the more detailed list, under 3, work with town council to understand and communicate the legal issues. And then it also says, develop specific recommendations for acquisition that eliminate, minimize any residential liability, and B, identify and minimize financial impact to the town. Well, each reuse alternative, or if we come up with separate reuse plans, the financial impacts are going to vary. So I and I think a number of these issues, having alternative reuse plans, is going to flow through a lot of analysis that we have to do. So I do think it would be very helpful to know whether we're looking at don't acquire or acquire with this reuse plan, or we're looking at multiple reuse plan options.
I think this, Gary raised a good question. Carl, that's a good thought. I think we have to, as we work through this, the task force is going to have to decide whether we're going to recommend the specific plan or whether we want to focus on just the question, should the select board acquire the site? And say, you can do a lot with the site. Well, we understand you can do this, that, you know, a list of things without specifying the pieces, because I think you're right, Carl. If we specify the pieces, we're going to have a multi-dimensional financial matrix to kind of address here. So, I mean, at the simplest level, you know, should the select board acquire the site because it's could be a value, could meet a lot of unmet needs in the town, and so I think as we work through all the pieces here, I think we're going to have to discuss that more. I do, I'll come to the second panel. I do think your comment about, Terry, your comment about what about not acquiring the site at all? We need to address that. I know there's some sentiment on the select board for that. Let's not acquire it and let's just manage it through zoning. Let somebody else buy it. Because somebody's going to buy this site and that's an option. I think we have to address that and talk about that, the pros and cons of that as well. David.
What did I want to ask? In terms of working groups and the organization of things, we have half an hour left. Clearly, there are areas where you all have expertise, for example, that I have none, and I have some in some areas that you don't have any. So we're pretty much going to have to break this job down into who's responsible as a sub person for spearheading the work on that issue. Is that informal enough so that we can have discussions amongst ourselves without it being a committee or a task force or all that sort of stuff? Because, for example, let's just take risk communication. If I have a thought about how our website should include this or that or the other thing, and I'm the spearhead of that, but not with a committee of people, I can one-off a document around or whatever. I'm looking about the mechanics of breaking this down so that we can all take on the tasks in which we have our expertise within the context of this open meeting and transparency question.
Maybe I can answer that. I think the way to do that, David, it's an excellent question, is let's say your task on this committee is risk communication. So you draft up some PR document, whatever it is, and then that goes on the agenda and the committee approves it, you know, in a regular open meeting. Or if you want to work with some other people on the committee, then you probably then present it to the full committee. Then it should be called the subcommittee and follow the open meeting law. But it's just one person, and it's a document, as Paul said, you send it to the chair or to staff, and it goes in the meeting packet, and the board adopts it or amends it or whatever.
But by that, well, it makes sense, but by that read, everybody here is working on a whole area by themselves, leading the work on an area by themselves.
Right.
And that feels a little bit limiting because your expertises could inform what I'm doing a lot
Right.
before I get to bringing it to a committee. So I'm looking for some informal way that we can do this without, you know, let me back up. The open meeting law, you've talked about it, and for a good reason, the town has had legal issues with it, and Attorney General has come up here. There's a reason for that law. The reason for that law is the trust in what we're doing. The trust in what we're doing is that we're being open, that we're not all getting together in Cafe Nero and figuring this out. So that has to be honored as a matter of trust, and that's risk communication. That trustworthiness is a foundation on which all of what we do is going to be judged. So I take it very seriously. And I want to be clear about why I think that's important. But, you know, there's a lot in this charge, and having any one person in charge of the whole area of it, it defeats the idea of a committee, because you know stuff and you know stuff and you know stuff that could be handy to me. I think we have to struggle our way through finding some
way of capping all that.
Yeah, let me just.
We struggled with this in the long range plan, and all I would say is the open meeting law is limiting. It's not easy.
But when we did the reuse, the authors of various chapters of reuse had specific assignments, right? There's somebody who wrote the risk part. He or she spoke with other people in doing that. Carl wrote the part with other Superfund side. We had various assignments.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
people talk to other people about
But
it.
they all-
So I think we should think of this as various assignments.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, is a kind of an understanding of how the informal, early, first work brings stuff ultimately to the open meeting law level.
Let's revisit that because it's on the table. Pam, then Rich.
No,
Pam?
well, we also dealt with it in the Energy Future Task Force, and it was collaborative with people doing work initially, and we all shared the work, together ultimately. But I personally think that I don't want to be in a stovepipe on this matter. I think we defeat the purpose of a task force. So I think we do have to struggle to be collaborative and to hear each other's points of view, even if we're a person who is perceived as the expert, wants to hear from someone who may not be. I just want to throw that out. So I hope we do struggle successfully with working as a team in a way. The real reason I raised my hand, however, is because I'm trying to understand, as I said, I'm trying to understand the dynamics here, and I'm truly a newcomer to it. I get the sense that there is a strong wind at your backs to assume purchase. And I think that I want to know if there's that assumption driving this, because I think there are real issues about purchase. And I hope that we are, I hope, as somebody mentioned, we're really looking into whether to buy it and not moving too quickly to, let's buy it and now let's just, do the fun stuff and see what we're going to do with it. So I just want to lay that on the table, that I think there has to be a legitimate, serious look at whether the town should buy this site. And I know, having looked at the report, the early report, I think there was a recommendation that we do buy it, right? I think I'm right about that. But I just wanted to understand better whether we are sort of driving fairly quickly towards a purchase place, which then the main work becomes the work of figuring out what to do with it, or whether we are seriously looking at the question whether it's really a smart idea to buy it.
Good point. But let me just go back a little bit. This all started in 2015 with a warrant article was passed by the town that authorized the purchase of acquired site under certain conditions. And that's where we sit right now. So the town is authorized to acquire the site. Now we have to determine if does that make sense from a financial point of view, from a risk point of view, from a reuse point of view. We're trying to answer the question, does that make sense? I just want to remark on a discussion here. Arthur D. Little told me that there are 4 stages in meetings. There's I hope I get it right.
Exhaustion is the last.
There's storming, forming, norming, performing. We're storming right now, right? And we're brainstorming, we're going through all the issues we have to deal with. And we'll get to the point where we're going to work as a team. But it's like in baseball, everybody has a position they play. And we're going to have meetings frequent enough that nobody's going to be stovepiped on this.
No,
See,
that's
because I want to show you a Venn diagram that I put together where a lot of these are intersecting. These pieces
No, that's
intersect.
great. No,
Yeah.
There have been some conversation, but I just want to state flat out, I think that the interweaving of our different points of view is extraordinarily important here. That's all. But back to the question of, the select board set up this task force, I think, to ask the question and answer it as to whether we should purchase it. I mean, I just want to, be sure that I understand that that's going to be a serious question. It's why would the select board have put us together if and stated the charge as it did, which where our primary task, it appears to be, is to advise as to whether we should buy the site. I just
I
want to,
agree.
no, I mean, really, either that's what it is, or we're really saying we're pretty close and we're now going to just, tie that knot and then move on.
This is an open discussion, and the question is, should we recommend the select board to acquire the site? That's the question.
Right.
It seems to me that at the base of that is we would agree that we want the town to control the future uses in some way or another. And is that better to do if we acquire it relative to the cost, or exercise control in other ways through zoning or public opinion or whatever? So there's that very basic question, but I don't know that we have an answer until we've looked at.
So I think our question is, should we recommend the select board to acquire the site?
Yes.
If the answer is no, then that triggers something else, which we may or may not want to answer or tackle. How to control, we get into zoning, we get into permitting, we get into other things, and we may want to cover that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that the given is that we want control, right? To some degree. Doesn't that seem?
Well, we do, by definition, we have control. It's part of the town, and we have zoning and things like that. I mean.
Yes, I know. Yeah, we do.
Right.
But zoning doesn't always anticipate what comes 10 years from now.
Well,
Otherwise, we
I
would.
just had a comment that another important part of the charge is the decision-making criteria that need to be defined in order for the select board to make that decision. So that part of the reasons for such recommendations. So defining what criteria upon which to make the decision. I think that's equally important, not just what the decision is,
Right.
but what specifically should be weighed in making that decision.
I'm just taking the liberty of putting up a slide, because I looked at I'm sorry, there's still some hands raised. I'll get to them in a second. What we're talking about here is number of tasks. We have to take this on as a group or individuals, but the first question, should the town acquire the site? That is the basic question, right? Okay, in doing that, what is the acquisition path and the legal path? Can the town acquire the site with strong legacy and future liability and financial protections, minimize the cost of acquisition? These are sort of questions. Can the town do that? We have to answer what are the operational post-acquisition costs. And to Carl, your point earlier, that depends on what is done on the site, and I think we should take that under advisement that maybe that's too complicated a question to answer. Why should the select board acquire the site? What are the possible uses? The reuse committee principles, which is a little hidden here on the, see if I can move this. I can't move this screen. There are various principles that the reuse committee came up with, and I'm going to circulate. I'm going to put this document on the website to make it a public document. And so to reuse with certain principles: multiple integrated uses, environmental stewardship, fiscal responsibility, and community synergy. Those are the 4 principles that the reuse committee established. And I still think that those hold here as well. The question of third-party engagement. What is the role of third parties? I think there were various acquisition options in the reuse report. I forgot who authored that. Are there partnerships? Are there third-party investors who are willing to share costs with the town? I don't know. I know that there are commercial and recreational entities that may have interest in the site and want to talk to the town about partnering with the site, however we define that. And then, of course, the risk and safety discussions. Assuming the cleanup goes as designed, can the site be developed and used safely, and how to engage the public? So I broke down all these, this charge into these questions, which draws to the organizational question about how do we tackle these. Because we can't tackle all of these as a group. I think we have to have certain individuals who are think of it as a major and a minor. Somebody has a major in the acquisition path and minor and everything else. And so when we come to these meetings, we can report back on how we're making progress on that, who we're talking to, who we have to talk to, how do we get the pieces moving, how we deal with these, with SKIO and the tag consultant. But I think we have to have various leaders in these areas that move these pieces forward. There are a couple of hands raised, so let me get to those.
So show us your pretty picture.
What's that?
Aren't you gonna show us the Venn diagram?
Oh, geez, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Venn diagram here. Pretty picture. I sketched this out of a napkin for Terry, but it didn't have this big cup. So we are, shows how interesting and complicated this task is, this task force is. So we're at the center, we're the, I actually I have this in a bill to make it. I'm a consultant, as Rich knows, you have to have a PowerPoint, so here we go. So we're at the center, we have a strong liaison with the, and we have to learn and keep learning from the Main Street Oversight Committee with Pam as liaison who will be at these meetings, so that's kind of hardwired, we have to keep in tune with the cleanup. We have the resource, the EPA SKIO contractor who will be a resource to us. We have the TAG grant consultant. We have outside counsel who is, we have to talk to and we have to get advice from. And that town council probably needs to talk to EPA and get advice from them. And I know that some of that's been happening. And then we have the cleanup contractor that we have to deal with. And then on the outside surrounding all of this are the other committees, because part of the charge here, if you read it, is interface with the Board of Health, interface with the other committees in town and third parties. And of course, the public is on the outside as well. So you can love or hate my colors here. I am colorblind, so that I just pick colors out of a hat when I do this. No, red, green, colorblind. So I thought this is just, once you kind of visualize this, these are the resources and the overlap. So it's impossible to be siloed on this, Pam, because there's so many intersecting pieces, I think. And then back to this. I'll take this off the screen and get to the question. I'm sorry, Carl.
By the way, I wanted to say, I have to leave at 8:30, definitely, so just
At
FYI.
say 8:30.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll get done with what we have to get done by 8:30.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry about that, but I got this family thing going. I mean,
Okay.
this baby and I have this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a family thing, huh? Carl, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was very helpful, Paul. I guess one question I would add to that first question about acquisition legal path is if the town does not acquire the site, what is the process? I don't think we fully in the last committee delved into who has site control. And then what process, I assume with all the money the federal government spending, they would ultimately end up with title to the site, but I don't know that for sure. But what would happen and what would be the likely process to put the site available for reuse if the town doesn't acquire it? I think we have to understand that in order to compare that and the risks associated with that with town acquisition.
Yeah, I think we have to get somewhat granular, but I'll tell you in general, and I think you know this from other sides, that a developer can come in and swoop in and make an offer. EPA needs somebody to acquire the site. They need somebody to sign off on the institutional controls. They need somebody to commit to adhering to sort of post cleanup controls. We can get into some of those details later. So they need an owner. When I've had discussions with people, there's a thought that when real estate developers get wind that this is going to be, 40 something acres of clean property, there'll be a lot of interest in those parties approaching EPA to figure out how they can purchase it. There's a big financial hurdle for third parties because there are liens on this property that probably only the town can negotiate and have those liens forgiven. I'm not a lawyer, and I can't commit to that, but the pathway to forgiving these loans can only probably be through a municipal party. That doesn't mean that another party can come in and cover those liens, because it's very valuable property. So in general, other parties can come in.
But the EPA controls that process. I mean, we don't have to discuss it here, but I think we need to better understand, that alternative pathway if the town.
It's a good question for EPA and for SKIO. I think the answer is yes. EPA controls the process.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Pam, hands down. You can take that.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm lowering my hand. I'm doing that. Let's see. I did it.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, this is a follow-up on David's piece. While we have Terry, is it not legitimate? I'm scared of the idea of, 6 task forces with all of the, requirements there. But if we assign one member of the committee to draft a document, a policy, alternative piece, they can talk one-on-one with the consultants, with the Maximus, with somebody else on the committee, as long as whatever they draft comes back through the committee before anything's done publicly. I mean, I think we need to lean towards that rather, rather than more committees, subcommittees.
We define, I may be talking out of school here, but you can get on the phone and talk to somebody, and maybe I can get on the phone with you and talk to that person. We're not, it doesn't have to be one person having a discussion to get information.
Correct.
And we're gathering information so we can make recommendations. So that's what we're gathering information.
Hate to throw a monkey wrench into the nitty gritty that we were talking about, the Venn diagram. Carrie's comments made me think of the following, and I asked this with a member of the board of selectmen who wrote our charge in the room as just a listener, right? Okay. I would put on the table for our consideration of broadening of the charge to read, this is a very drafty thing, I just wrote something. The key responsibility of this task force is to recommend how the town can best take advantage of the opportunity presented at 229 Main Street to advance the multiple interests of the community, including whether the town acquire.
I can't speak to the select board, but there's a lot of work and time going into approving the charge of the task force. So
I've heard, and I'm learning.
Do you think we're not allowed? I mean, it seems like that's restating what's already in our charge.
Possibly, it just seems so focused on purchase or not, and listening to the conversation and your suggestion of we can use in other ways. Now, recommendations that are out there include Area C used in other ways and reflect all of that. True, but the point that I'm making is from the perspective of people who might have different opinions in the public about what we do, and being as broad and inclusive as we can, rather than it being an either or decision. There are ways, as I've heard you all suggest, that we could take advantage of the opportunity of the property with zoning or with other legal mechanisms short of the either or on acquisition. So yes, it's a monkey wrench into the works, excuse me, but conceptually, I think there may be some value in broadening just the wording.
I don't think it's a monkey wrench. I think it's in our charge right now. The question is, should the town acquire the site? Yes. Okay, then it takes us one path, or no, then it takes us down another path. And I think that's included. If there's a no, how to take advantage of it. We're not gonna, I don't think we're gonna redefine the charge here. Can I defer to the select board?
Okay, so several comments. First of all, yes, it's already in the charge. However, I do anticipate, as has happened with many task forces, that at some point you are going to have some suggestions to change the charge somewhat. And that's fine, we have a procedure for that. If we get down that road and you want the select board to change the charge, we can do that. We can entertain that and discuss it at a select board
I
meeting.
just want to put the idea of what I'm trying to capture on the table is all for us to discuss.
But can I just just I just want to weigh in and just say that I think that the charge covers what we're talking about here fully. I also think that it's not binary in my mind. I mean, it's not you say no to purchase and we're done, or you say yes. It's you may say no to purchase, but say no, but with conditions or under the following circumstances, right? I mean,
And I also want to respond, I did not really write the charge. What I did was I took everybody else's input. From Pam, I have a lot of input, Gary and Paul, some residues, I think Matt Johnson, and I just put it together. So, yeah, okay. And then the other thing is about subcommittees. You do not have to be so intimidated by them. A very good example of a group that's getting them to work is the 2025 group. They have one big meeting like this every month or twice a month. Then they have 7 or 8 subcommittees. And each one of those subcommittees has several people working on publicity or arts or whatever it is for the 2025. And they have their own little meeting. It's posted. It's not recorded necessarily. I don't think there's a big crowd of people watching it, but they're doing it under the open meeting law. It's not that it's a nuisance, but it's not impossible to do that. So don't be.
Okay, one more question for Pam, and then I want
I wanted,
move on to the
so I want to hear a bunch of things before Pam leaves in the charge that it says, these are things you're gonna do. One of them is meet with my 2229 committee. And my 229 committee is pretty non-functional right now. We've been together in a room since before COVID and we've had Zoom meetings, but I would really like to arrange a site visit where both committees posted as a public meeting. That gives you the opportunity for the people who are walking around the site to talk with committee members who are there and update them, and then, but not have to have a full meeting and PowerPoints about the site or anything like that, but really discuss what's going on. And I was thinking about Monday, May 22nd or Monday, June 5th from 10 to 12.
wait, I want the final agenda topic is the next meetings and everything else. So
But Pam's gonna leave in 5
I
minutes.
know that's why I wanted to stop this discussion.
I'd like to know when the meetings are before I leave, because that's important to me.
Before, can I just table that for a minute? Before you leave, I want to make sure we know what our next meeting is going to be.
So that's
There's a
great,
large.
that's great, good, thank you.
Wait, there's a large issue how frequently we need to meet and is it on a regular schedule? I don't think Thursday night now is gonna work for Court ever, because I spoke with him, so it may not work for anybody else. So I just want to invite, is there an evening, like a Wednesday night, that you could make more meetings than not? I mean, we're all gonna miss meetings. I'm since there are people who have jobs and work here during the day would be tough. 7:30 in the morning would be painful. I couldn't do it.
I'll throw my stuff in. On the light board, we had meetings at 7:30 in the morning. They were very productive. Everybody showed. I'm a morning person. I also teach definitely on Wednesdays from like 4 to 7 or 8 at night and possibly other days of the week. So I have some constraints, and certainly Wednesday is a non-starter for me.
Okay,
At night. I'm sorry, because I teach it at starting around 4.
Tuesday nights. I know Tuesday nights are rough for some of my committees, but people do Tuesday nights. We select the right Tuesday night in general.
And we're talking about like 7 to 8:30 or something, right? I mean, not.
Yeah. Tuesday night.
Are we talking about once a month and twice a month?
Well, let's start with Tuesday nights.
Well, it depends.
Once a month, I
I
think.
think Court has school committee, but that might be every other Tuesday.
Right, he has it twice a month. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to kind of thread the needle on Tuesday. And, we're not gonna solve this right now, and maybe we'll have to do a doodle poll. But Tuesday nights, you're open to that, then we can, okay. Frequency of the meetings, I think we have to have a couple of meetings a month, twice a month, until we kind of stabilize. Because we have still have a lot of organizing to do. We want to meet with the SKIO people. I know the EPA program manager, Karen Ehrenberg, wants to come to the next meeting and offer SKIO and tell us what they can do. The TAG consultant, when they are selected, probably we should have a meeting. So we need to get those interfaces out of the way. We need to do this kind of probably on a twice a month basis, I think. Well, let me just take this Tuesday night opening here, and then kind of run with it. We won't decide it, but can we decide on the next meeting? Can we
If
do?
you look at the school committee thing to see that it's not a school committee night.
I can look up the calendar. There's a school committee meeting on the 23rd. Of May.
Not the
The 30th,
the day after the holiday.
30th?
Right, I don't see one on here. I see not the 16th. I do see it for the 23rd. I don't see it for the 30th.
Let's try the 30th.
Okay, tentatively let's try our next meeting. Check your calendars after this. Let me know and I'll check with Court. I think he's free. May 30th, 7 p.m. Same time, same place. Okay, we'll get to more meetings. Let's just nail the first one down. Okay.
I still I want to schedule a joint site visit. Either is May 22nd or June 5th, those are Mondays, 10 to 12 at the Star Met site. Is that something that you guys could do?
What was the maybe?
You don't need to. Yeah, you've been there. Paul doesn't need to get into that. It's the new people who.
yeah,
need
no,
to.
I definitely want to see it.
Could we do it earlier?
I don't know that.
Just because I work full
I
time.
know from the contractor might show up. They're coming from Connecticut. And some of my committee members actually aren't available for early morning meetings. So you wouldn't be able to do that.
I could do it pretty much anytime on the 22nd.
David?
I'm afraid on the 22nd, I'll be in Sicily.
So you just want to-
Zoom availability will depend on Wi-Fi access. Don't forget it, right. But, well, I would prefer to do it with all of you there, but I can contact you, Pam, and have the conversations that I'm gonna need to have with you without necessarily attending this. So don't let me hold up what the group can
But you can do
facilitate.
that.
But yes, I can do it.
June 5th, 12.
10 to 12 by
Pam, can you do that? Or do you guys have something else going on?
June 5th, you said?
Are you talking? Are you asking me?
You said 22nd, right? I'm gonna see my brother for the
I-
first time.
10 to 12 on the 22nd. I think so.
It's on June 5th.
I might be up in Vermont still. It just depends on what the situation is here. That's all.
June 5th. Pam, June 5th, not, we
The date is June 5th.
Oh, not May 22nd?
Right,
We
right.
walked by that.
June 5th.
June 5th would be for the site visit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
out of the country.
I can do that.
Pam, is there another time that I might be able to walk around?
No, I think I could make it on the 5th. I mean, just the thing is, this baby just was born 2 hours ago and I don't know what's going on with anything up here yet. So I may be here for 2 weeks or not, but I think I'll be back on June 5th. I hope I am.
We have a few doodle polls to do here.
So we want to schedule it, let's have our meeting on the 30th and schedule this site visit later then. It sounds like you don't have a date.
So
Well, I mean, I
Okay.
don't want, you should not be held back because of me. I mean, I
Yeah. Yeah.
and I plan to try to be here for the 30th. I mean,
Okay.
I'm still- I don't know how ornate this meeting is.
On the 30th.
And can somebody just walk around with some other person?
You have to walk around with one of
The
the,
site is tightly controlled. You need to have prior arrangements. So we'll figure it out on the 30th.
Oh,
Yeah.
great, okay, good.
So I hope to be at all of your meetings, but I will be in Scotland on that week of the 30th, so I'm gonna miss that meeting. But go ahead and.
this is a big committee and we have lots of things going on, so. We have to take good minutes and they'll be recorded, so if you miss the meetings. Just one thing before we adjourn, I do want to adjourn here in a moment. We have to talk about the public meeting at our next meeting, because the charge has this meeting with the public. They said early on, we have to decide when the best time to have a public meeting and what that public meeting would be about. Clearly, public forum, sorry, with the public, to tell them what this task force is doing, and just, I don't think we're even close to being able to do that.
First.
What? We have to get through our storming and norming.
And the purpose is to get the ideas from the public. What are their questions? What are their fears? What do they want to use this and all that kind of stuff.
Right, so we're gonna have to discuss that at the next meeting. I'm gonna invite the EPA contractor to the next meeting, because I think they're an important resource. So that, before any other urgent business here, I think we got through a lot of the agenda. Okay.
Are you gonna invite town council to the next meeting? Because that's actually, this whole liability issue is something that people are going to want to hear about at the public meeting.
I think to answer your question, we want to invite town council to a meeting. I'm not sure it should be the next one. I think I want to get, because Skio has a larger remit to help us than just the legal part.
But was your question about whether to have them at the public forum?
No, I
Okay.
some feedback that we've already discussed, or that you've already discussed, to have at the public forum would be helpful. Right, people are gonna come to the public forum and they're gonna have that same question.
We're not having the public forum next.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a while.
I think I'd like sort of an offline communication with the legal leader here to talk to Mina about where he is in his discussion. Because I'd like him to talk with us about not the options, we know what the options are, but what is his thinking, after he needs to talk to EPA and kind of get on track for, how are we gonna do this? What's the pathway? And, or else we're just gonna have a discussion on options again, and you could read our report. With the options. So I think we need to talk to Mina. We need to have a leader on doing that. Think about your assignment for the next meeting, what you'd want to lead or assist. We could have a leader in these various areas. And again, there's a legal area, there's a risk area, there's a reuse area. And
Operational liability.
and the operational.
Risk communication.
The liability is sort of on, it's on the legal side, it's on the legal side, and the operational area, because, if the town acquires a site, what are the costs of doing that? Last question before we adjourn. Well, actually, I can't say that. We have to vote to adjourn. Go ahead.
Because I won't be here next week, next meeting.
30th.
Yes. And the discussion will include the public forum. I can't impress upon you enough that we have to have our act together before we have that meeting. This early business should not drive when we have a meeting. What should drive that is when we can answer people's questions or be able to direct them to people who can. It's a relationship establishing moment for all of what we're doing, and being at 6s and 7s would be destructive to what we're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely.
That's why I was hyperventilating when I actually mentioned the topic. So we're not ready yet, even though the select board likes to do it early in the tenure.
It's all a matter of definition.
And any other, do you have your hand raised, Pam?
Oh, I was having my hand raised to, basically, I guess this is David. I mean, I think I think we have to have our act together and before we do things generally. So I don't discern that.
I think this is a great first meeting. We got to know each other a little bit. We're brainstorming. We're not close to kind of figuring out exactly how to do the work, but we know sort of the various areas. So I think the next meeting, think about the areas that you would like to lead. And what I mean by that, as we get together, I'm going to turn to those leaders and say, what we found out on the legal side, what do you think on the reuse side, what is the where are we making progress in those areas? And then we'll have more general discussions like we had today on sort of what's our mission but any other business? Do I have a
Thank you.
motion to adjourn?
I don't think we need a motion, right?
To adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, yeah.
We do? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure other committees don't.
Yeah, you do. I move that we adjourn.
I second, 'cause the game is on.
All in favor? Thank you. Great meeting. See you on the 30th.